We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. By the time you listen to us to this, it's Thursday. We are recording it on Wednesday night, and I have with me Tony, who's down in South Carolina. He was on recently, and with all the stuff going on, I reached out to him and said, I'll talk about this. There's some things that are happening nationally, and of course, we've got some ice issues down in South Carolina that he might bring some insight to. First, we need to bring up Tony. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the
Yeah,
time to do
my
this. I appreciate it.
yeah, my pleasure. You have to. I've told you anything time. You give me a call, and I'll appear. So yeah, I'm happy to help. It's great. It's a great podcast. I listen to it all the time, and anything I can contribute would be is just an honor to do it.
Well, I appreciate the help, as you know, and I've told people before, I'm kind of a lazy bastard. So anytime I can get somebody else to carry the load with me, I'm in. We should talk about the whole Jeffrey Epstein
Yeah,
uh, bill situation. I will tell you this: the news just came across as we're recording this. We of course know the bill passed the House and the Senate. We
that's
were
right.
waiting to see if Donald Trump would sign it. Expecting him to dick around with that. The report is now that he has just signed that. Now that comes from Donald Trump,
Right, that's right.
so you can take that for what it's worth. Um, but the interesting thing about it is most of these bills, wouldn't he normally have a big camera crew and do it in the Oval Office and make it a big show? This one, not so much. That seems interesting.
Yeah, I think he's well aware that he's in the Epstein files and that there's a lot of stuff about him. So he's going to downplay the entire Epstein files thing and just sort of go along with it. But he also knows that the fix is in. I'm sure you know, and I know that we're getting reports that a lot of his name has been blanked out. All mentions of Trump in there are being either removed or just highlighted over with a black ink. So he's had thousands of people, a lot of manpower doing this. I personally think he played for time and then time sort of ran out. But by the time ran out, he'd already had the work basically done in the Justice Department. So we're not going to get this scoop on Trump so much, and maybe not on Republicans. But the way I look at it, there are copies of all those documents in various organizations around the world. It's just
Absolutely.
not, yeah, it is just not here. It's in Interpol, it's in Britain, it's wherever Epstein was, there are probably files. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were involved in the investigations through the years. So that means there's a ton of potential whistleblowers that can blow the whistle. They're the victims themselves. And Marjorie Taylor Greene and Massey and others have said they will read the names of the powerful elite that took advantage of these girls. So, he releases the files and we go after some guilty Democrats first. I'm perfectly fine with it. If Clinton's in that group, I'm perfectly fine with that. And then it's just a question of digging out the Republicans and then Trump. And when you read something, you can get an idea, even if it's redacted, pretty much who he's alluding to. Might not say the name, but you'll be able to tell. And if we've heard of thousands of mentions of Trump's name, they'll be able to pull some of that out. And the news organizations, they don't particularly care for him, so I think they'll dig it out from other sources. So it's a good thing, Congress, well, the Republicans, cowards that they are, they knew they had to take this vote. This was a tough vote for them.
The question I was going to ask you when it came to the vote in the House, we heard there might be as many as 100 Republicans to vote for it. So we were kind of readying ourselves for a nice vote in the House of Representatives, a vote that may be, you know, veto proof ultimately. But then we get 427 to 1. The only person that voted against it between the House and the Senate was this clown from Louisiana. Forgot
Ray
his name,
Miller?
but he's a no, no, no. It wasn't Ray Miller. It was God. What the fuck was his name? He thinks he's a
Yeah.
cowboy.
Yeah, Clay. I think
Um,
it's Clay something or another.
Clay
But I
Harris
could.
or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah. But he said that he's taken a principled stand that this is going to hurt a lot of victims. He stands out by himself. He's a piece of shit anyway. It's not
Well,
a big
let's
deal. His one vote doesn't mean anything.
no, no, it doesn't. But it's kind of annoying that he did it. I've done some deep dives on Clay Higgins, and Clay Higgins doesn't have a real good track record. He
No.
was a police officer. Now, he wasn't a police officer, he was an information officer, but he was kicked off the police force for racism and for police brutality, violence, that sort
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah.
He tries to find ways to get paid under the table because he has hundreds of thousands of dollars in support payments that he hasn't made to his wife and his kids. Um, he's just an all around piece of shit. And he's standing up for integrity. Yeah, fuck him.
Yeah, yeah,
We
yeah. You
need
get
to
what you vote for.
recognize, yeah, we need to um, start uh, the cancel culture club and cancel a dipshit like this just for the fuck of it, just because he's easy to single out. So now it goes through the House. We're surprised by how many people vote for it. Then it goes to the Senate. A lot of people were thinking the Senate wouldn't pass it. Somehow he'd muddy the waters there. Even Mike Johnson came out and said, I didn't really like what we passed here. I hope the Senate straightens out some of this and takes care of it. But then it goes to the Senate, unanimous consent, like in 20 seconds, they
That's right.
pass the goddamn thing. Were you surprised by that?
I actually was surprised. It wasn't. I expected a vote. I didn't expect. I didn't expect this procedure. But once again, they're cowards. So,
Yeah.
what has been happening, I believe, in the last 3 weeks, is the cracks are beginning to come in between the administration and the Republicans in general. He's abused them. He's used them. They're now starting to see he's a lame duck. He truly is a lame duck, and he doesn't
Yeah.
really care about the party. So this was a vote they didn't want to be on the wrong side of. They don't vote, so there's nothing on the record. It's just passed. But I also suspect that the word may have come down from the White House that the fix is in on those. That they'll use procedures like we're under investigation, so this has got to be redacted and that has got to be redacted. And Trump's name is a matter of national security. So that's in the bill. If it's a matter of national security or if it's a matter of law enforcement and investigation, that items within that can be protected and by redaction. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that.
Well, now this is where I would probably disagree with you because what you're suggesting would be a very specific strategy set up by Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
That's right.
And I don't think they're capable of that. They aren't
Well,
they're
if you,
they're ham-fisted. They do all this stuff. I think
yeah,
what the House and what happened in the Senate is a red flag to Donald Trump, even though he's trying to play it off. It shows that people for the first time in the Republican Party in both the House and Senate were willing to push back against him. I know that's making him nervous. You can see just the way he's behaving. Uh, is the fix in? Well, remember the one axiom that I always say: no matter what Donald Trump does, he will fuck it up. So even if it is a plan, it will bite him in the ass ultimately.
yeah, but remember, he's not the only rich and powerful guy in the Epstein files. And if you remember, about a week ago, a week and a half ago, he said it's a Democrat problem. He said it was a Democrat problem because I think they had a strategy on how to deal with the Epstein files. And so, will he fuck it up? Yeah, he'll fuck it up. But there's a lot of people behind him that won't. And they came up with a strategy on how to deal with it. He's at some point they said, Mr. President, this is now a go. Your name has been redacted. We're going to go down this investigation. That's why he ordered the investigations of Clinton and Larry Summers and the rest. And now we can proceed. So I do think that they would he have passed it on to the Republicans, to Mike Johnson and to the rest? Yeah, I think so. I think the Republicans were told, okay, you can vote however you want to vote. We've got this covered. So, you and I might be in slightly disagreement with that, but that's what I think. Listen, I'm not a conspiracy theory guy by any means. However, this administration has only been as destructive as it's been because it's had some competent people good at destruction. It has some competent people that are involved in this cover up, and they need to cover him up so that he's available sometime in the future to probably issue out pardons to them as well. So they can't have his name. They can't have him going down just yet.
Well, the reason I disagree on this is because um, to me, this is a signal of something that's inevitable for a guy of his personality and the group around him. These are narcissists. They do well at first, then they start the spiraling out. And eventually they come to a point where they can't manage it, they can't handle it, they can't, everything's overwhelming, and they start just flailing, which Donald Trump is apparently doing. You can see that every day. I think what happened in the House and the Senate was the first signal that it's getting away from Donald Trump. You can see it's getting away from Donald Trump. Let me give you an example. He wants to charge James Comey. He wants to charge James Comey with crimes. So he takes it to the DOJ, and the prosecutors say, yeah, nah, we're not going to charge him. There's nothing there. And he said, too bad, you're fired. We're bringing in this bimbo lawyer that's an insurance lawyer that's never done any prosecution. We'll have her walk it into to the grand jury. So she does. Now, she doesn't know fuck all about fuck all. She's incompetent, just like Donald Trump is. We find out that they may be fighting against whether she was even placed in the position legally. That would, pretty much end that case. But now today we hear that something we've never heard before. She goes in, supplies a draft, and then comes back with something different, and it's supposed to be the official. And all she does is has the foreman sign it, and they call that an indictment. Well, it didn't take long for a judge to realize that's all kinds of wrong. She wasn't totally honest. This isn't really even an indictment because it wasn't gone through the right procedure. So Donald Trump is making mistakes just about every day, doing some stupid things. I personally think we're at a stage where everything's starting to get away from him. The wheels are coming off the bus, and we're just in the early stages of that.
So with that statement that you just made, I agree. There's so much incompetence, there's so much corruption, and things are starting to be revealed. There's a lot of pushback. With my statement regarding the Epstein files, we'll know in 30 days if the Epstein files, if there's mention of Trump or no mention of Trump, if it's only Democrats that come out, if we get told there's investigations going on. So we'll know in 30 days if the Epstein files, but that's going to resolve itself over time. In the end, your statement is completely valid in that the administration is starting to crumble. It's a little bit here, it's a little bit there. He's probably the most unpopular president in my lifetime at this point, short of Richard Nixon right after the Watergate scandal. He's at 37%, 38% in the polls. It's going bad for him. And everything that they've done has been either illegal or it's been done incorrectly. That's all starting to fall apart. It's just that it takes time for these things to fall apart, for them to be revealed. I saw something the other day about Noam and Injustice. She has spent millions of dollars in publicity for her. So she has a videographer. They've bought these planes. They've paid money to LLCs that nobody knows who they are and where that money was and where that come from. And it turns out that one of the LLCs belongs to some like her chief of staff or some member of her organization.
Yeah, it was formed
That's
2 months
just
ago or something.
yeah, yeah. And this is all, this is all just part and parcel for what everybody's doing. So you got the head of the FBI taking his girlfriend on private jets. You got people enriching themselves little by little. All this stuff is illegal. All this stuff is going to be revealed. It's just going to take time, but there'll be time. Now it looks like maybe the mainstream media, not so much, you and the rest of our media that have been on this from day one as hard as they could be, but it's looking like the mainstream media is starting to unravel some strings, and word is getting out. And that word's getting out not to us blue, because blue, we know all about this stuff, but now it's
Yeah.
starting to unravel among Latinos and among MAGA and among everybody else. They're starting to see prices not coming down, but going up. They're starting to see joblessness. They can hide. They're not going to put out the October job report because it's down
Yeah.
60,000, right? They can try to hide as much as they want, but this stuff is getting out, and the other side is starting to realize it. And if the other side is starting to realize it, and their voters, then the people that they vote for, their politicians, are going, "Oh wow, there goes my livelihood. I can't stay with this lame duck." So yeah, I think it's starting. It's going to get bad, and the next year when we have the midterms finishes them off, because the midterms are going to be a bloodbath.
I personally think it may get to him before then, because what
I
I've
hope
known with
so.
Mars, when what I've known with narcissists is exactly what you're saying. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, but then you get to a point where there's too many things going on at once, and then it goes from the drips and drabs to a catastrophic crash
That's
because too
right.
much has happened. He can't control it. He can't. It's overwhelming to him, and it crashes. That's why I think these little bits and pieces don't suggest that it's going to take a year to do it, because it's coming too fast now. And granted, they're smaller, not enough to take them down all at once, but it's going to be too much at some point. You were talking about the files when they're supposed to release them within 30 days. I think what's more likely to happen is that they're going to say, well, we have these investigations. They're going to find ways to push the goalposts back, or at least try to, which will work against them because it'll just piss people off more. And this is what Donald Trump does. He will delay something, even if it makes it worse, because he doesn't want to deal with it in the moment. And you talked about how they redacted all these things. And honestly, we know there's been some redaction going on, but what are we talking? We're talking about like a couple hundred terabytes. How do
Right.
you go through that whole
That's
fucking
right.
thing, even if you've
That's
got a
right.
thousand people to do it? And as you said, there clearly are other copies. Obviously, the UK has some information. They stripped
That's right.
Andrew.
That's
Uh,
right.
we've got the Epstein estate. We got a lot of things out there. I think when that stuff came out, we almost didn't need the files to take down Donald Trump, because I think there's more coming from the Epstein estate. All you need is one picture, one video, something really damning coming out. And I think from the Epstein estate, or somebody in the DOJ who sees them fucking around and being pissed, leak something out, because we know Donald Trump's administration's a leaky motherfucker. Something will come out to destroy Donald Trump. And the reason I say that is, when they say when the government wants to get you, they're going to get you one way or another. And I think at this point, even the Republicans have their mind set. They've stepped in the direction where they want to get Donald Trump. Whatever way it happens, they're going to get him. In the same vein, the media, I said, when it becomes more valuable for viewers to go after Donald Trump as opposed to entertaining him, then it will be like a mudslide of all the media coming after him. And I think we're right on the precipice of that.
I listen. I totally agree. He's irritable. His comment to that female reporter about shush
Um,
piggy, uh, is just another knife in his own back.
yeah.
That reporter's been talking, and she's been being interviewed about it. And there's a sympathy factor for females, and he's pissing off women, and women are still the biggest amount of voters in the country. Vote of all colors, but he's looking ragged. He's looking bad. And I'm personally hoping he has a stroke and ends up a blithering idiot in diapers in some facility someplace. But even that's just too kind for a way for him to go. I want him to suffer a little bit more. But we have a ways to go yet, and you can't have this kind of destruction, and it's going to be difficult to put it all back together again into some kind of normal sense. The only good thing is that he's done this. He's created an example that needs to be addressed by law on what would be allowed in the future and what would not be allowed, so that another Donald Trump can't arise sometime in the future, another populist, and do exactly what he's done. Should never be allowed for a Donald Trump to, tear apart the White House, or it should never be allowed for armed men, masked men, to just grab citizens off, and I'm talking about citizens now, off the street without due process just because they are Spanish looking, they're brown and maybe have an accent, and we're seeing a lot of that. So you're right. You've been saying this now for a while, and now it's coming to pass that the administration is starting to crumble, and it's looking like the rats on the Republican side may be jumping ship. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
And something else regarding the redactions alleged to be made in the Epstein files. There's a lot there. It's going to be hard to go through all that stuff. If Donald Trump is in charge of it, he will fuck it up. But now that Donald Trump has signed that bill, that is law.
Yes.
And now that that's law, especially now that it's law, anybody in the DOJ who was involved with covering up, destroying, or redacting stuff illegally, they're all going to be culpable for prosecution at some point down the road when the DOJ is different. It might be 3 years from now, it might be 2 years, but maybe 3 years. But eventually, these people are going to be on the hook for doing some pretty illegal shit by hiding things regarding this bill passed by the House and the Senate.
But the people that are actually doing the highlight are just people in the trenches. They're sitting in cubicles someplace, and they're being told. So yes, their bosses will probably be accounted for. What we probably won't see is the rumored treasure trove of photographs and videos that were taken out of Epstein's house in New York and in Florida. That's what I would, I'm sorry, but that's what I'm curious that would come out. But the bill calls for unclassified, and Trump is the ultimate classifier in chief, so to speak. So when we talk about classification in the military, you talk about the originator and who has the ability to override and declassify stuff. It goes as high as the president. So, anything that's in that treasure trove of videos and stuff, they could bring to him, and he could just wave his hand like so and declare it classified. That won't be released.
That's true, but that doesn't come into play with anything coming out of the Jeffrey Epstein estate. That also doesn't come out of play if there's somebody in the DOJ that's fed up and just leaks that fucker out.
That's right. That's right.
Officially, we probably won't get the videos or the pictures.
That's
and
right.
Even if we do get the videos and pictures, there's very few media outlets that would show it that wasn't at least censored. But we look at an administration falling apart. There are people in the middle of that administration know they're going to be under that piling heap of shit if they don't do something. And that's a lot of pressure to put on. You were talking about the rank and file in the DOJ that would do the redactions and all that stuff.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. It is the rank and file, but there's going to come a point when the rank and file realizes the danger, and they're going to go, "I'm not fucking doing that," and then creates another rift within the organization.
I'll be honest; they're just regular folks. They got a job. They haven't been fired yet. I doubt that they'll have the bravery to stand up. One or two might, which is all it takes. But the reality is another source of information, frankly, this as good as the pictures, is the victims themselves. Yeah. Most of them, if you've noticed, if you watch them interviewed, they won't mention names during their interviews. They all say, well, the FBI has that information. We've given it to law enforcement. However, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Massey, and some others have said they're going to read the names of the victimizers, right? The bad people on the floor of the House. And they're protected by statute if they read that names. And a couple of the victims have said, if you do that, we'll stand right beside you while you read those names. So that's a good thing. I mean, right now I have not heard much from any of the victims about Trump being too culpable, other than that one lawsuit that we've heard about with the 13-year-old from back in the day.
Yeah.
But and then we got one or two said they got groped. Okay, that's probably not enough to take him down if he didn't get taken down by everything that's in the past. But but still, there's a lot of others besides Trump that need to get taken down. And I'm hoping that we will discover them. If the Democrats, I'm perfectly fine with that. If the Republicans get hidden, like I said before, if they read the names on the floor of the House, then we'll at least know who they are. We may not be able to prosecute them now, but it'll be just a question of time.
One thing you have to consider is when you talk about, way back in 2015 or so, where he talked about grabbing the woman by the genitals, you got to consider the tone of the country too. It was a much different time then. People were just getting in on Donald Trump. He looked like a hero to a bunch of people. But now it doesn't take long. Once people start, they love to raise somebody up, but they even love tearing them down more. And I think we're more in that situation right now in terms of the rank and file, and they'd be too afraid. We don't need all of them to do it. We just need one person
One,
to
two.
leak that.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, one or two people to leak stuff out. That's possible. Um, Anything that looks like Donald Trump is trying to hide this, like by delaying it or putting out a crazy amount of redacted material, this is all going to work against him. They're going to hate him more. They're going to make it believe that he's hiding something. What he did in the House, it was inevitable that he was going to have a lot of people voting against him. So he said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it." And the only reason he did that is to not take the loss, at least in his mind, because those 100 people that were going to vote against him, that's a huge political loss to Donald Trump. And then the Senate on top of it, that was a huge loss. And that I really think that's a signal of maybe the mindset of how the Republicans are feeling about Donald Trump. I would not at all be surprised if things keep going the way they are. We get some surprise announcement that they want to impeach him, and I'm talking about the Republicans, because this is a sinking ship. They can't right this thing no matter what, and they're starting to realize that.
Well, I will say Massey, God bless him. I don't know much about him other than he's a Republican. He said, look, if you vote against this, you're going to be primaried, and in the primary, they're going to say you're pro pedophile.
Right.
And
And
the Senate people, they're a little slower on the uptake because of their age, but the same rules applied. They caught that pretty well. So yeah, they were gonna turn on them. And would I love the Republicans to impeach him? Yeah, I don't think under Mike Johnson they'll do it. So Mike Johnson still seems to be his boy for whatever reason. I don't think we're going to see an impeachment. I don't think we're going to see an impeachment vote. I would love that, but the best opportunity for that is going to come up when the Democrats take the House in another year. But I just don't see the Republicans just yet jumping ship. They're still scared of the 15 or 20% or that 39% who still kind of think Trump is doing a good job. They're still scared of it. That's their voters, and they don't want to lose those voters either. So they're trying to find, in my mind, politically, they're trying to find a way where they don't appear to be against Trump, but also are not considered pro pedophile. But the next thing coming right down the pike in January is the health care. It's back up on the table. And I don't think the Democrats will close the government for the health care, but you could bet that they're certainly going to use it as a cudgel against the Republicans in January. So they're going to go from healthcare to Epstein, from Epstein to healthcare. And then they got more Epstein coming out in 30, more in 30 days. And so those will be the stories going into the new year.
I think that you're going to see some Republicans maybe switch their opinion of healthcare because it's going to impact them more than it is the Democrats. There's more ACA people in red states than there are in blue states. It's not a ton more, but it's enough that it's going to do some incredible damage to them. I mean, you think about the economy, you think about the Epstein files, you think about healthcare, you think about all this stuff. Donald Trump is doing some serious damage to his own party. And these people in Congress know this. They see this. Um, I've said this to somebody, and I would have never said this before, but in terms of the impeachment thing, if they got mad enough and if they got angry enough, they could attempt to force him to resign. Now, people will say he'll never resign. And for the most part, I agree with that. But what I know about narcissists, two things happen. When they get put in a corner and there's no way out, and everything they do, their old tricks aren't working anymore, they get nervous, they flail, they do crazy, stupid shit, which is what we're seeing right now. But at that point, they're looking for an out. They're looking for an out because they're cowards and they love to run if they have no chance of managing or manipulating the shit. So at some point, if the Republicans go to them and do a Nixon thing and say, listen, we're tired, this is fucking crazy. We're not only going to impeach you, but we're going to convict you and you're going to be gone in shame, or you could just take the easy way out and resign. And I know when these people think they're in trouble, the first thing they want to do is get away from it as quickly as they can. And I think Donald Trump would believe that if he just ran away and they'd stop all this stuff, which isn't true. But Donald Trump is fucking delusional.
Well, the issue is, are they afraid enough? After the last election in November, you would have thought that the Republican Party as a whole would have taken a look and said, okay, what is wrong here? Well, Trump said the shutdown caused this massive set of issues. And it was a lot more than just a shutdown. Healthcare was big. The economy was big. It was more than just healthcare that caused the massive losses in November.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But the Republican Party as a whole, from what I can tell and from what I've read, and I try to stay on top of it like you do, really didn't learn the lesson. They didn't seem to care about the losses that much. So what's going to drive them to now be desperate enough to go ahead and impeach their president? I think we're going to have to wait for the midterms. And if the midterms are a bloodbath, the Democrats take the House, maybe they take the Senate. It is possible at that point, quite a few Republicans in the House of Representatives will go ahead and agree with impeachment, particularly since the Democrats will do a whole bunch of investigations. They'll have a whole bunch of evidence, and there'll be no place for the Republicans to go because now we've got the presidential election coming up 2 years after that. So if they want to have a shot and not lose not only the midterms, but the presidential election, they're going to have to do something about their Trump problem. But I don't think it's going to happen until the midterms because they don't seem to have learned from, massive losses in Jersey, California, and New York. They have not learned, and Virginia. They just haven't learned anything. They have learned the Epstein thing is a whole different deal. This is pedophiles, and this is scary shit for them.
Did they learn or did they not learn from those elections? Those elections were a red flag to a lot of Republicans. That was something that they hadn't expected. They tried to play it off, but that's what these kind of people do. Oh, it's no big deal, which generally means it's a big deal. Directly after those elections, what happens? Every Republican votes against Donald Trump in the House and the Senate. And honestly, I don't see how he coordinates something and say, oh, the fix is in and I did this. The Republicans know as well as I do that Donald Trump will fuck it up. The fix isn't in. He's just talking. So you have the elections, you have this vote, you have the Epstein files, you have the
Tariffs, though. Let's not
economy
forget tariffs.
tariffs, yeah,
Yeah,
the
tariff vote.
economy and all this stuff. I don't think the Republicans are the kind of people that will never admit they're wrong, but
Right.
they're going to get nervous. Now, if you know, and I know that the midterms are going to be a bloodbath, and you're a Republican, do you wait till after you get your ass kicked to do something? Because finally, I realize it, and I think they are starting to realize it now. Or do you try to do something to save anything going into the midterms? That's where I'm questioning it. Because if I'm a Republican, I'm going, we need to get out from under this as quickly as we can so we can try to put something together and get some reasonable uh, showing in the midterms. Why wait till after the inevitable of getting your ass kicked? Why not try to fight ahead of time?
Well, and I'm with you that they are going to consider some fixes. So let's look at healthcare. The plan that I'm hearing is not subsidies that will be done directly to the insurance companies, but money given to individuals to then pay for their insurance. It'll be in their minds, that's a better deal because, hey, we used to give you $10,000 to pay for your health care. Well, we'll give you about 500 now. You just apply that towards that. And they'll say, healthcare fixed, right? They have no healthcare plan. So, but in their heads, they will then use Fox News and Max and all the rest of them to say, look, we did something with healthcare. We trusted the American people to pay for their own healthcare, so we are giving them money to pay for the healthcare instead of a government subsidy that goes to some nameless insurance company. And that's just one thing. Tariffs. That'll be the next thing as well. They will somehow find a way to either get the president to lower tariffs on certain countries or they'll just say no. We have the power of tariffs in Congress. So they'll just say no, you can't do 100% tariffs on China anymore. Something like that. So yes, there's some defeats. All those will be defeats for President Trump. All the 50-year mortgage, is it a stupid idea? It's a stupid idea. But I bet
Absolutely.
it passes through. It'll go through Republican Congress because the people who go, well, look at my mortgage. It's only $500 a month, but you'll be paying it on 50 years and your interest will be more than you ever even attempted to borrow. But they're
Yeah.
too, you know what I'm saying? So they will have some political fixes that they will pass before the midterms to try to say, look, we're trying to lower your costs, right? Because the next thing is going to be lowering costs for the American people. How can they do it and do it in a Republican way? Well, they really won't accomplish anything, but they'll say they accomplish it. And it'll all be cosmetic and it'll all be useless. And their voters won't know the difference.
Honestly, I don't. Those two ideas that you suggested, giving the money directly to the people for health care and the 50-year mortgages, those were just dumb ideas that Donald Trump pulled out of his ass. There's been
Yeah,
no discussion. There's been no planning or
that's right.
strategizing over that guy.
That's
He
right.
just pulled it out of his ass.
Right.
And I think the vast majority of people who hear it now, like let's take the health care. Let's give the people the money instead of the insurance company. Okay, you give me money that we now give to the insurance company. And now instead of being part of a big group, we're individuals and our health care will still increase. That's a dumb idea. Even Republicans understand that's a dumb
Well,
idea.
they'll do it,
Eh,
but
I
they
don't
could
think they
also
will. I
come
don't
up
think
with
they
health
will.
health savings accounts. That's something they've floated before. They can come up with junk insurance plans that are cheaper, right? And allow those. And young people will buy a junk plan, not realizing it's not worth the paper it's on. So there's a
But
lot of
this,
cosmetic things that they can do. It doesn't necessarily have to follow, but they will do something. That's my point. They may not give the people money, but they will do something and declare that they, the Republican Party, are on the side of the American people and that they have done what they could. They have done fixed health care, and their voters will buy into it. For
I
what?
uh, I can't help it. I disagree, and I think the 50-year mortgage is a joke. It won't ever happen.
No, I
I
don't
think
think it
what will
will either.
happen. I think what the healthcare situation is going to happen, and I only say this because this is what we've seen out of Congress forever. They're fighting against the ACA subsidies. They don't have a plan. The one
No.
plan they have is absolutely ridiculous and will be nothing but a great talking point for Democrats going into the midterms. That's not going to help them. Even voters that voted for Donald Trump last time, the reasonable minded ones, will see that that's stupid. I think what's more than likely to happen between now and January, they will extend the ACA subsidies for a year and push back the goalpost, delay it, because that's what they always do. I think ultimately that's what it would happen because we are leading up to the midterms. If they don't pass the subsidies and they come up with some bullshit idea between now and the midterms, their people, their constituents are going to be buried in cost or kicked off the rolls of healthcare, and they are going to be fucking fuming. They've got to settle it down a little bit. I think they should extend it for 2 or 3 years, but they're going to extend it for a year as a compromise just to settle this whole thing down. They got so many things working against them, they can't afford to have yet another thing and get destroyed even worse in the midterms. They're going to
Well,
try to have to settle some things down, otherwise they don't have a prayer. And I got to believe they understand that.
yeah, well, hey, listen, if they start talking healthcare, that's a good thing. Now, extending the healthcare for 1 year, it's not necessarily good, and they'll get pushback from the Democrats on that, and that's okay too. So long as we're talking healthcare, we're talking costs, and we're talking, that kind of stuff. Now, I think that the Democrats would be fools to let them off the hook with a 1 year subsidy. I think they should fight a little bit about that. Maybe not vote for it. Make a case to the American public why subsidies for 1 year and the Republicans can't be trusted to then extend those once this year's over. Will they do that? I think you're right. I think you're right. They have some other things in the background that they say, well, we're working on these other things. So I think you're right. In the meantime, what I'm seeing about Trump is you're right there too. He's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. MAGA's finally noticed he's only interested in a couple things. He's
Yeah.
interested in foreign affairs because he's trying to make money, Saudi Arabia, money to Argentina, all that stuff. He's interested in his little pet projects, which is like the White House and a big arch and anything he can put his name on it. And he's interested in making money, So, but nowhere is an interest in doing things for the American people. And they are starting to see that. So as Trump gets weaker, Republican Congress gets more pissed off, and they start to say, "We got to move away from this guy." And and then the midterms will get closer and closer. So it's a house of cards that's gonna fall. And I don't think anything that they do is going to save them from the midterms. I don't think anything they do is going to save
No,
them from,
no,
they have one bench player that I think could get elected president, and that might be Kemp from Georgia. That's about it.
maybe.
Rubio, all the rest of them, they don't stand a chance. So,
No. Well,
it's
one of the
going to be
reasons
an
I
interesting
believe
year.
the reason I believe the healthcare thing will be settled with a minor extension to the ACA is because we're only a month and a half out before people start having to pay this. It's too
Yeah,
short a
yeah.
time to sell an idea, to take it to Congress, to vote for the idea, to get it past to get it past the filibuster. They don't have time to do that. So they're either going to let it go and take all the heat, or they're going to extend it for a year just to push the goalposts back. And based on history, that's what Congress typically does.
Well,
They've done it with the CR, they've done it with everything else when it comes to money.
so let me ask you this. So, knowing how much they hate the subsidies and knowing how fractured their caucus is, they come up with a plan to go ahead and do the subsidies. There's going to be a significant majority in the House of Representatives that won't vote for that. There'll be a bunch in the Senate that won't vote for it. The only way that's going to pass, of course, I mean, they'll pass it through because they'll do it with Democrats. But it's going to
Right.
be fun. It's going to be fun to watch them fracture over this.
Well, I think there's more of a taste with the Republicans with the subsidies than we might think. Because as I said, the ACA, there's more people on Obamacare or ACA in red states than there is blue states. And the fact of the matter is without those subsidies, it's going to be absolutely devastating to those people. People won't be able to afford health care. It will be a disaster. So I think there
Oh,
are more
sure.
people in the House um, and the Senate on the Republican side that may be cool with the subsidies. The only problem up to this point is fear of Donald Trump. And I think there's
Yeah,
less fear of Donald Trump right
there
now.
is
They
less
see
fear.
he's a sinking ship.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the subsidies are only one part of that. We also have impacts on the
Yeah,
Medicaid people. That's 40 million Americans.
right.
So, you know, I don't know what they're going to do with that because they're not going to go back on the big, beautiful bill to do anything about that. So, healthcare is certainly going to be a giant issue, and there's going to be a lot of video out there available, just like there is with ICE right now of people having problems with their health care. And there should be a lot of news stories about people whose kids were getting health care through Medicaid, but are not. And now they can't receive the medicine and the care that they need. And they're going to just
Uh,
seem like they always do. They're going to seem harmless. So, regardless if they put the subsidies for the ACA, great. But that still leaves 40 million other Americans without it. You know, all this bad stuff about healthcare is giving me a little bit of hope that in 28 that maybe for the first time we'll actually have a discussion about Medicare for all, a universal package for everybody.
I
When
agree with you.
Obama,
I was going to say the same thing. If we get
yeah,
a horrible crash and a disaster in healthcare,
yeah,
we'll be more likely in 2028 to have universal health care
yeah. I
because
mean, Obama
people will just
tried.
have a stomach for it.
Obama tried, but it was three Democratic senators, each of them getting money from the insurance companies, that prevented it and led to this abomination of the ACA. ACA
Yeah.
is it's just standard commercial insurance, and they're still making a bunch of money off the ACA, and they're still rejecting claims. They're doing all the bullshit that businesses do, which is not maximize as much profits. It's the same thing with Medicare Advantage. Medicare Advantage is just a big fucking ripoff of the government. I have standard Medicare with a subsidy, supplemental insurance. That's perfect. Well enough. But I'm seeing all sorts of plans. I'm seeing people that want and it's just another fucking scam. But if there was a Medicare for all, Medicare Advantage would go away. Thank God that would go away. Medicaid, as we know, would might exist in some form for poor people, but pushed under the Medicare for all umbrella, and the country would be better off. I mean, we all pay taxes, and it's great we got this giant military that spends 15 to 20 times more than our nearest competitor, whoever they are, or more than the next 10 countries in line. But we're not getting the benefit out of our tax money we should. If we had a national insurance plan like the rest of the world has, at least those of us who pay into insurance, at least the citizens would be getting something that is a requirement, and frankly ought to be a right, and that's healthcare.
Absolutely. The whole Medicare thing, when I signed up for Medicare last year, I had the opportunity to go Medicare Advantage. And I did some investigation in it. And I didn't like the idea that instead of the regular Medicare, I'd now be with an insurance company again because I don't trust them. And now we're hearing that Medicare Advantage is having problems. They're pulling out of certain markets. There's fraud and all this stuff. So I
Yeah.
went with the standard Medicare. I told my wife, I said, it's just safer to stay with the standard Medicare. But there is a lot of bullshit going on. I got a call today. This was interesting to me. And
Well,
for
first, you
somebody
probably
else,
should explain to some of your viewers who aren't old enough what's the difference between Medicare Advantage and Medicare. That might be
well,
worth doing.
Yeah, well, Medicare, when you get Medicare, you get two A and B. One is for catastrophic hospital stays and that sort of stuff. That's free. And then B is for your day-to-day health care going into clinics and
Right.
stuff. And that's about 175, 180 bucks a month. I hear it's
Right.
going up by 10%
Right.
though.
And the
So,
doctors are paid by the federal government. That's the
right,
big
right.
thing.
So that's it. Now, Medicare Advantage, they suck you in because it's a bit cheaper and more inclusive, but um, you're just substituting an actual commercial pub or
Company.
insurance company to provide the services that Medicare. So they get money from Medicare and then they provide services for you, presumably less, but it seems more because they're charging you less. It's a weird thing. But I got a call today. This was interesting. I got a call today from my clinic. It came up on my phone as Ridgeview Clinic. Okay. And I thought they were calling because I owe them about 90 bucks for the last thing and I haven't been able to get down there yet. And I was going to go today or tomorrow and pay them the 90 bucks. So I thought that's what they were calling about. So when they called me, I figure I'll call them. I'll let them know what I'm going to do. You know, they always get their money. So they can't be possibly worried. I pick up the phone. Ridgeview Clinic is what shows up on my phone. And I get this gentleman with an Indian voice, clearly not calling
I've,
from this country.
I've had
And I
that
go,
call.
and they call up and they say, "Yeah, Mike, we just want to talk to you." And I'm going, "Go ahead, tell me, and I'll tell you, and then we'll be done. We'll take care of it tomorrow." So he starts talking about some plan, and he's specifically checking my name and where I live. And then he says, then he mentions my doctor, which is probably easy to get. Says, we have this plan that's preferred by your doctor. And I said, wait a minute. You mean to tell me you're trying to sell me something here right now? You talked to my doctor, and my doctor agreed that I should buy whatever you're selling, presumably Medicare Advantage or something like that.
Right.
Uh, and he said, yeah. I said, hold on. I know my doctor pretty well. I'm going to give her a call and find out if that's true because this sounds very strange to me. I know the doctor, and she wouldn't do that. And so this guy is going back and forth and he's going through whatever he's reading, trying to pitch me on it. And I said, you know what? I realize I'm 65, but I'm not as slow and untech savvy as a lot of people out there. What you're saying sounds like a lot of bullshit. And it doesn't sound like you're calling from Minnesota. And the clinic I'm in is strictly Minnesota. So something sounds fishy here. He goes, well, maybe you can call your doctor and then you can call us back. Thank you very much. And he hung up
Quick.
and he didn't give me a phone number to call him back, oddly enough.
Yeah, folks,
That's-
here's the thing. When you do the ACA, or you do Medicare Advantage, there are three types of plans essentially. So you have a gold, you have a silver, and you have a bronze. And bronze is cheaper, and that's what they try to sell you on. If you're doing Medicare Advantage under bronze, they'll say, well, you get a little bit of dental, you get maybe some optometry kinds of stuff. And oh, by the way, we'll give you we'll let you go to a fitness club of your choosing to stay healthy. But the thing is, you are in a network, and if you stray off that network, then you're going to get charged. If
right.
you are going to get a procedure done under Medicare Advantage, you have to be referred. And your referral goes into the Medicare Advantage company. Now, it's a company, and the company, if it's United Healthcare, turns down all those referrals right off the bat. They just turn it down. And so you're not getting coverage and you're not getting medical procedures because now you have to fight the insurance company who's now turned you down for that particular procedure. With Medicare, the government pays directly to the doctors' organizations. You don't have to sweat it. The other part of that is the doctors have to take the price that Medicare sets. So if you break a bone, Medicare says if you break your arm, it's worth $500. We'll give the doctor $500 plus 15% profit. and that's all he'll get. So you'll get a bill, and the bill will be $5,000. You don't have to pay that bill. The doctor, by being a Medicare provider, well, they can go ahead and take the $500, and Medicare will pay 80% of that. So you have to be smart enough to get a second insurance, which are generally not that expensive. I pay $120 a month for my wife to have a secondary insurance, and that's called a supplemental. You don't have
Right.
any of that if you do Medicare Advantage. So for those of you that are on either ACA, you're stuck there because ACA is, you're not quite at Medicare age. You kind of don't have any other health care. You're stuck with those provisions. And the government provides a subsidy to the insurance company. You're stuck till you get to 65. But at 65, you get to choose. And I would say that's when the corporations go bonkers on old people, trying to get them into Medicare Advantage plans. And you'll get phone calls, you'll get letters, you'll get texts, you'll get emails, all trying to sell you on their plans. And so Medicare Advantage has as many old people enrolled in Medicare Advantage plans, if you take all the corporations, are as enrolled in Medicare. So whenever I get a chance to talk about it, I try to talk people into being smart about not taking a Medicare Advantage plan. There is just
Yeah.
no benefit to you as a person. But remember, it was created as a political animal by Congress because they were under pressure from insurance companies. They were bought and paid for by insurance companies. It is the same thing as 401ks taking the place of regular pensions, right? That was originally meant as another way for workers to be able to save money. And now it is the standard pension. You pay for yourself. Congress and the Republicans have managed to try to get everything that was good in life and put that burden on you yourself and maximize profits for the companies that provide their political donations.
401ks are good, but they aren't as good as pensions
No, they're not.
because 401ks are finite.
That's right.
Pensions aren't. I get a pension. It's not a huge pension. My wife gets a pension. It's a better pension, but I will get that pension until I'm dead. If you
Same
run
here.
out of money in your 401k, you're just
Or
out of money.
or if the stock market tanks,
Right.
right? Because
Well,
401 is an
exactly.
investment in the stock market. So they put you in mutual funds, and if that tanks, you could lose 30 to 40% of your pension. And who's in charge of the economy right now?
Yeah.
We are one recession away from being back in 2008, where everything tanked. And if you were on a pension then, or were thinking about retiring, you probably weren't going to retire because you lost 40% of everything you had in your 401k. I'm like Mike, former military, so military pension, Social Security, retired teacher pension. And that's in addition to, having saved some money as well.
Yeah.
That kind of tied me over, that I pull over on top of the pensions. So you got to be smart about money, but you have to understand that the federal government is not a bad thing, but all these programs come out of Congress, and Congress is at the whims of their donors. And don't kid yourself that the Democrats are much better at this. Bernie Sanders is, but the centrist Democrats are not.
I think this healthcare is going to be a turning point for a lot of people because if they don't extend the subsidies, there are going to be a lot of people struggling and suffering. They're already suffering now because of jobs, because of uh, um, the higher prices of things, in spite of what Donald Trump says. The Republicans are taking a beating right now. We can see that in the polls. If you can trust the polls, Donald Trump's taking a beating. People are at that point where they're finally feeling the pinch. And that's when things start to change, when people, even Republicans, start feeling the pain. Then they don't care. They just want to do whatever they have to do to stop the pain. And some of them would even vote for a Democrat if they feel like their Republicans have put them in that situation to have pain.
I remember Mike when he first got elected, and he started talking about tariffs, and then they started with the immigration crackdowns. And we said at that time, you said and I said, we're going to have to feel some pain to make this all
Mhm.
change. It's finally starting to happen. The pinch is becoming more and more painful all the time. And frankly, I don't see anything in the economy that's going to get better until this administration is gone and a new administration is in its place. So we're looking at even with the Democrats take Congress in 26, I don't see how they can make. They may change the tariffs, but it's too late to get the workers back to work the fields and agriculture. It's too late. A lot of the countries that bought from us aren't going to buy from us. They have found other suppliers other than the United States. So we're going to feel a lot of pain until the next presidential election. And if we don't get a Democrat in office and under a massive mandate, we're going to continue to feel pain.
And everybody says, well, the stock market's good. Well, the stock market has been falling lately, and eventually it will catch up with the stock market. There have been some things that happened recently. One particular, and I'm not a stock market guy, but this tells me something's up. Peter Thiel, one of the richest guys in the world, right?
Yeah.
He was heavily invested in Nvidia,
Right.
the
Right.
AI thing and all that stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And that may be one of the hottest stocks out there currently. This thing is making all kinds of money. Peter Thiel just sold off all his interest in that company. You don't think he knows something? That
He
something
knows.
he knows, and why would you do that? Why would you divest from a company that's doing so well? Why would you do
There's
that?
there's been a couple of the smart economic billionaires that have made some strange moves lately. Somebody, I'm trying to think of who. Uh, he's a wealthy guy. He lives in a small house. I can't think of his name.
Warren
Billionaire. He
Buffett.
just Warren
Warren
Buffett
Buffett.
just sold off like a bunch of Apple stock. You know, the stock market is doing well because the corporations have made massive layoffs. And whenever they make a massive layoffs, their profits go up. And if you so now the massive layoffs have occurred or are occurring, but eventually that's going to run out. And then their profits are going to drop because
Right.
people who are laid off, Ford knew this with his own workers when he started paying them better. They can't buy their own products. They can't buy products
Right.
from anybody else. We're getting to that point where there's going to be less money in the economy because people aren't working or they're not spending it. And you're already seeing that with, tourism. You're already seeing that in car sales. You're already seeing that. The only things that seem to be going, phones are still being sold, but people
Yeah.
are tightening their belts across the country. So we're going to start seeing less profit by the companies, and those artificial rises in stock prices caused by massive layoffs, that's going to end, and then we're going to see stock prices go down, and we're going to enter a recession. It's just that
Well,
simple.
you know, the idea of laying off just to maintain profit, that is a last ditch effort by corporations. The layoff is the last ditch effort.
That's right.
That's a pretty significant um, thing to do in order to maintain profitability. But as you say, that only goes so long, and then there's no place else to go. And then that's where the trouble is. My brother was a stockbroker, and we were talking about the stock market. And he said, yeah, they talk about records now and all that stuff. And he says, well, you got to understand, Joe Biden came into office. The Dow was at 30,000, maybe a little under 30,000. When he left, it was 44,000. Donald Trump goes in, it drops down to like 38 or 39,000. And then it pops back up to 44. And now it's going to 46 or 47. In real terms, since Donald Trump's been in office, while it hasn't fully tanked, it's only grown by a couple percent,
That's
which
right.
means growth is slowing in this country. So it looks good at 46,000, but it's only like 2,000 different than what he got it at 44,000. And he dropped down to 39, 38. Now he's back up to 44. So while he's crowing about this, there's been literally zero to very little growth in the stock market since Donald Trump took over.
Yeah, and then if you look at the fundamentals, which they always talk about the fundamentals, and the job market and the price of goods and consumer confidence, those are all on their way down. Um, so their exuberance is also not only caused by layoffs, but is in a conviction that AI will take the place of the unemployed workers that they laid off. And yes, AI will certainly make a dent in a lot, and robotics as well. But at the end of the day, those workers are still out in the real economy, unable to afford goods and services. So that's all going to have an impact. And that 46 that you talked about, which is only 2,000 more than when Joe Biden left, we can expect before the midterms to see a little bit of a downturn on that. And certainly, as he stays in office, if nothing else happens to him, he's going to cause a full blown recession. The confidence in AI, I think, is a little overblown. To be honest with you, it's a bubble. We've seen these bubbles
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, the Dow closed at 46,138, which is up 2,000 from when Joe Biden left. No growth. Um, it's not terrible. It's staying steady, but we went from 30 to 44 in 4 years with Joe Biden. So there was steady, consistent growth. With Donald Trump, it's been up and down. It's been erratic, which stock market doesn't like, and there's been very little growth.
Yeah, it's basically
I,
flat.
yeah, yeah, it's flat, and that's
Flat.
not a preferred way to have the stock market.
No.
But fuck, I remember when I was in high school, and I would have to read the stock report every day on the radio station I worked at in high school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what the Dow was then?
Oh, couldn't have been much.
Under
13,000.
a thousand, under 1,000,
Oh, yeah.
999.5, whatever. I remember reading that all the time. But so now I forgot what I was going to say. But we've got the situation now where Donald Trump and the Republicans are refusing to announce um, jobs and GDP and all this stuff. They don't. They look at it as no news is good news, but it's not good news if these people are getting their own numbers and they can see what's going on, even though we may not know it, or if they aren't getting the numbers. That is going to be part and parcel to the crashing of the economy too,
Oh, yeah,
because
yeah.
you got people out there flying blind trying to make decisions, and they can't because they don't have real information that they can trust.
Well, the big players have that information available to them by the by
Yeah.
the the big giant banks, Goldman Sachs. They all have sources. We get to trickle down, so we will get to see jobless claims by not by the federal government, but by other sources like hiring services and that kind of thing. So judging by what I kind of know, we lost 40, 50, 60,000 people jobs in October. Now we're into November. November's will come out in December. It's probably going to be equally bad. It won't be net gains. It'll be net losses. And so then we go into Christmas. Usually Christmas is there's a hiring frenzy as people hire for the Christmas season to do packing and stuff like that. I'm not seeing that that's happening this year. The
No.
big companies, UPS, Amazon, FedEx, the rest of them don't seem to be hiring to get ready for the Christmas season. So they
No,
know something
Amazon
we don't know.
Amazon laid off 30,000 people. So fuck. Uh,
Exactly.
um, I wanted to bring up the AI thing again because I think you and I are on the same page. Everybody's worried and wringing their hands and clutching their pearls. Oh my God, AI is going to take away all these jobs. It's going to be disastrous for this country. If you're old enough to remember, there was a similar attitude about television. There was a similar attitude about cable. There was a similar attitude about VCRs. There was a similar attitude about the internet. Oh my God, the
Yeah.
internet! You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
believe what it's going to do.
Yeah.
I think what will happen is what's happened in every one of those cases. There has to be adjustments in markets and stuff, and there is a benefit to AI. But the idea that it's going to take millions of jobs and people are just going to be out of work, I think that's crazy. I think that's just people worried about stuff. I mean, there's so many jobs that you can't do with AI. You're not going to hire AI to do the plumbing or the electrical work in your
Right.
home, building a house. You might get them to maybe do some architecture. Maybe it'll hurt that area,
Right.
but then there will be adjustments. I think if you're in the market and you understand AI to be a tool as opposed to competition, and you understand how to use it to your benefit, you can do some crazy shit. You make yourself more valuable by understanding the technology and
That's right.
using it to your benefit.
That's right.
I don't, I, and like you say, I think it's going to be a bubble. Everybody gets excited, and
Yeah,
then all of
yeah.
a sudden that bubble pops.
Well, I mean, if you're a paralegal, you should probably be worried. But it takes a paralegal to ask the question of the AI for what the
Right.
paralegal needs. So maybe you need one less paralegal in your lawyer's office. It's not going to take the place of that particular lawyer because the AI is not going to go to court for you, right? It's going to be, so some things, some paperwork things will definitely go away. It's not going to take the place of dentists and dental hygienists. It's not going
No.
to take, so people will have to adjust to the places where they are. If you work in an Amazon factory, which I understand is a terrible place to work anyway, let's face facts. Your job is probably going to be taken by a robot. If you're in Walmart and stocking shelves, we'll certainly see robots that stock shelves in Walmart and places like that. So there definitely will be some workers that will go away. And just like everything else, there'll have to be some retraining, there'll have to be some adjustment, there'll have to be changes in the way that you look at a career. Um, college, in my view, college is almost like a waste in most ways. Most of the careers or the diplomas you get out of there are useless in today's workforce. And college says, well, we're not there to provide workers. We're there to provide an education. Well, okay, great. But colleges are going to have to change their attitudes because people can't afford to go to college anymore. So we're going to see probably more certificates, more community-based education where you get a certificate to do a particular thing using an AI. We'll see that. So there will be adjustment. And frankly, there are less people. To be honest with you, there are less. We are boomers. We were the massive organization. When you look at Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're not there's they're not getting married. They're not producing children. So yes, there'll be AIs, but there'll be less jobs, but there are less people anyway. So it'll be a period of adjustment.
And people have to understand about AI. There's not just a button on a computer that says, I need this job done, boom, hit the button. This thing has to be prompted and asked properly. I can ask
Yeah,
for something on AI. If I don't ask the right questions or put in the right parameters, I won't get what I want. So there's got to be somebody that has some knowledge in order to make it work.
that's
If
right.
anything, it's going to make things faster, which is good, but there still will need to be people that understand the the area
Well, how to
and
use it in
understand
the area.
AI.
Right, right. So if
Yeah.
you're a teacher having an AI, I doubt that an AI will take the place of a teacher unless you're homeschooling, right? But a teacher in a classroom will talk to an AI and they'll be talking about Genghis Khan in history and they'll say, AI, they will have done this before the class, create a visual of Genghis Khan and a horde and with some statistical data and all the rest, and they'll come up with that. So AIs have to be manipulated by people. But there are and they are I listen, I use AIs. I use an AI now and I use it for educational purposes. I've used it to help me write a manual for how to start a lightsaber school. So AIs are just another technology. I I
It's a
I, I
tool.
it's a tool and maybe they'll come up with something a lot smarter that might be innate. Like I have Alexa in my house. I don't know what you have in yours. And we use AI, we use Alexa all the time. Every now and then, Alexa will just start talking to us out of the blue. We're not sure
Yeah.
what
Yeah, that's
reacted. We
weird.
didn't ask it to it. But when we want to create a list, we'll go, Alexa, add this, that, and the other thing to our shopping list. Alexa, turn on lights 1 and 2. We don't completely have a complete smart home, but we have some smart features in our house. So in fact, Alexa just told me she doesn't know how to help me with it since I mentioned her name. She's insulted,
Yeah.
But people don't be afraid because for us boomers, it's too late to worry about AI anyway. So we
Yeah.
could use it as a comfort tool to help us in our old age. But for Gen Alpha, which are like your 5 year olds and your 6 year olds, and Gen Z, which are now in your 20s, there are just less of them. Less people are getting married, less people are having babies. And it's a worldwide trend. And so I'm not worried about big adjustments. And I think that the big corporations that are involved in AI are the evil tech companies, which we don't like. So we're suspicious of them anyway. We're
Yeah.
thinking they're trying to create a master super intelligent AI, which will replace humanity. And they might be trying to do that. But I think when we get at some point, there'll be laws against that, just like there's laws against, cloning a human being in the United States. I think I haven't seen or heard of anybody actually trying to do that. So
No.
the laws aren't there yet, but the laws will come there. And I will say though, having said all this, the tech pros have had their way with this administration and their way for a long time politically. And it's now time to start to go into their businesses and stop them from all the things that they're doing, which harm the environment, which harm workers and all the rest of it. We need a strong Democratic Congress and a strong Democratic president in 28 to kind of say enough's enough.
For those people who are similar age to Tony and I, if you drive cars and you drove a 60s vintage car and now you drive a 2025 car, the amounts of things that are different or better or automatic, but here's the deal. You still need somebody to drive the car. You still have to. That's why I look at AI as more giving us more functionality, more convenience, and that sort of thing. And yeah, it may impact some things, but I think when it all shakes out, it's like everything you hear when you talk to people on the internet. They hear one thing and they turn it into a disaster for the future. I'll give you an example. When uh, Thune said, "Okay, we will vote on the ACA in December," okay, everybody came out and says, "Oh, I know what's going to happen. Mike Johnson is going to say, we'll only vote on the ACA if you let the Epstein thing go. And he's going to hold it over our head. I'm sure that's going to happen." Well, clearly, that's not happening. We don't have the ACA vote yet. We don't know if Mike Johnson will do it. But Mike Johnson is very weak at this point. He's got his
Yes.
whole group voted against what he wanted to do. Fuck, he voted for it because he was so afraid. Um, so I think that I think we're at a cracking point with the Republican Party. I think we're at a cracking point with Donald Trump. It could take a while. It could be tomorrow. This whole thing could fall in like a big pile of Jenga fucking wood. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
take that much to do it. One bad thing happens. Like, for example, what if the Supreme Court comes back and says, yeah, Donnie, those tariffs are bullshit. You got to stop them. That's going to be a big hit for Donald Trump and his administration because he's got no other economic way.
Well, he's only interested in the three things I said: making money, foreign affairs to make money, and then his pet projects like the ballroom and bathrooms and all that stuff. And even that, he's had some pushback. He wanted to put a chandelier, I think, in the Lincoln bedroom, and they told him no, that the ceiling cannot load bear a chandelier. And then somebody on the internet said, let's put a chandelier over his desk.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. Look, there's a lot of bad stuff. I think we're walking away positive from this episode with Mike and I. There's bad stuff going on. I mean, I've been following ICE in Charlotte. They're heading towards, is it New Orleans, New York next?
New
Um,
Orleans. But yeah, you
you
mentioned that
know,
you're in South Carolina.
and they're in North Carolina right
They're in
now.
North Carolina, but you're close. What do you know
Close
about
in a
what's
couple hours.
happening in Charlotte?
So if you follow Charlotte, Charlotte is the people in Charlotte are protesting, hindering, um, recording everything that's going on. One Hispanic guy driving a truck got stopped by one group of ICE agents. He proved he was a citizen. He had been a citizen for 6 years. He was from someplace in South America. He drove a few blocks, got stopped again by another group of ICE agents. They broke the glass on his side window of his truck, dragged him out, threw him down on the ground, and it recorded. And then he's yelling, "I'm a citizen! I'm a citizen! I'm a citizen!" They eventually held him for a while. Then they had to let him go, and he showed all his bruises on the video. They've he did the usual stuff. They went into a church and grabbed a bunch of people in a church. People are getting fucking fed up with the whole ICE thing and the way they're doing it. Charlotte's been bad. Portland seemed to prove that they could resist in a way that was effective. Chicago has fought back, and there's been some violence and stuff. There hasn't been too much violence in Charlotte, but they've run people off the road. They've chased people in their cars that were running on the ground. They crashed into a van and pulled a mother out of her van. And they said, well, she crashed into us. And all the official things say that it's the people who were either beat or either run off the road or whatever happened to them. They said it's their fault. They resisted arrest and they're illegal. They're just stopping brown people at random, playgrounds, stores, churches, on the street. If you're brown and you sound like you have an accent, they are literally going up to you and say, "Where are you from? Or where's your accent from? You have any papers? Can you prove you're a citizen?" And and people who are, saying, "I'm a citizen. I don't have to answer your questions." I will say this: I'm a brown person. I don't have an accent. If they pulled me over, I am not going to I am not going to risk my truck, being broken into. I'm going to pull out. I'm going to comply. I'm going to say, "Look, go to my house. We'll go to my house. I'll get my birth certificate." I do refuse to carry my birth certificate with me, you know. But I am
Absolutely.
seeing, yeah, I mean, I am seeing people not serving them. So they will go into a store to buy a soda or some lunch, and they're being said out of the store. They're pulling landscapers that are doing landscaping off people's private properties. They're walking on the private property. And there was a woman who came out and said, "You can't be on my property. You have no business being on my property. You can't talk to my workers." And they had to back away from that. So
I
there's
heard she
whistles
pulled.
blowing.
I heard she came out with a gun too. That
Oh,
might
she
have been
did.
an inducement.
Yeah, yeah, she did. Yeah, it is North Carolina. I mean, I'm not going to be that stupid. I am not. I've got firearms. I won't say how many. But if I knew it was an ICE agent, I would certainly not pull out a gun, even if they were on my property. So if you're going to resist, resist properly. You're allowed to record. You're allowed to blow whistles. I don't know that if you can cause a traffic jam that stops them, great. But somebody's going to get rammed. If you're willing to take that, that's okay. You're certainly willing to, um, and I would say you could yell and scream all you want at them, but that's a good way to get yourself thrown on the ground and your head beat in with. So, but certainly you're allowed to engage in a polite, civil manner and question their patriotism. Not that they give a shit, and you should do it politely and you should do it firmly. And then, but when you need to pull back, you pull back. Don't jeopardize yourself. It's a sad state of affair that the country has become. I think that there will be a lot of people going to jail. I think ICE as an organization will end if things go right in 28. I can't imagine it surviving a Democratic presidency. A lot of firings. Customs and Border, I can't, they'll rewrite the rules on where they're allowed to operate, I'm sure. I don't know that they can fire all the agents, but a lot of agents will quit. So the borders in 28 will probably not be that particularly, they'll probably be porous, to be honest with you. But you know what? It's fucking well worth it to get rid of some of the folks that are in those organizations.
But I'm interested to find out, like you said, the next stop is supposed to be New Orleans.
Yeah.
New Orleans is pretty red.
Yep.
I've often wondered what's going. I mean, North Carolina's kind of purple. There was a lot of pushback in North Carolina. They're
Yeah, there
now going
was.
to Louisiana. Mike
Charlotte
Johnson's,
is Charlotte's blue.
yeah. But
Yeah.
you go to New Orleans, I suppose New Orleans is blue, but the rest of Louisiana is pretty red. It's going to be interesting to see what happens when ICE goes in there and starts stepping on the shoes of Mike Johnson or Donald Trump fans. That may not
Yeah.
go well.
Well, New Orleans is basically a black city. One of my favorite places to that I've
Yeah.
used to party in when I was younger. It's a black run city. It was back then. I think Katrina destroyed a lot of homes, but a lot of people have moved back. They're black. They're not Hispanic.
Right.
Uh, they may go after the agriculture that's outside of New Orleans, you know,
Right.
but I'm not even sure why they're going to New Orleans, but they are going to New York. And in New York, there's going to be a lot of mistakes because it's a big Puerto Rican city. It's an
Yeah.
international city with a lot of Latinos, but a sizable Puerto, and so, Puerto Rican could easily pass for a Mexican. They're both speaking Spanish as far as these morons are concerned. So I think there's going to be a lot more mistakes. If they go into the Bronx or if they go into some of those places where there's a lot of gang kind of thing, I can foresee violence happening. I mean,
Yeah.
if they go into New York, it's because they're going there because Mandana got elected. It's just that simple. And he's supposed, I read somewhere today before we came on that he's supposed to meet with Trump. So, you know, if they go into New York, it is just possible as an international capitalist city that the wealthy people who live in the brownstones and work on Wall Street are not going to be particularly happy with ICE being in the city,
Oh,
causing
oh, hell
havoc,
no.
right?
They'll be less happy about ICE than they are Mondani. It's funny about Mondani. All the Republicans trying to make him out as some 9/11 sympathizer and all this. I even saw somebody who tried to create a tweet that he allegedly made after 9/11, laughing about it and saying "fuck America." Here's the problem with that. First of all, he's not Middle Eastern; he's Indian. Second of all,
Right,
when 9/11 happened, he was 7. So
right.
it's just fucking ridiculous. And it's ironic that they would try to pin that on Mondani, which is ridiculous. And Donald Trump is going over to Saudi Arabia, cutting deals with him, having the crown prince, the murderer, in the White House, having them here when we know that the vast majority of the pilots in 9/11 were Saudi Arabian. We know that
That's right.
Osama bin Laden was Saudi Arabian,
That's
but they
right.
give them a
That's
pass,
right.
and they want to try to blame Mondani. I talk to Trump humpers all the time, and I just say, do you not fucking read? Can't you use Google? What the fuck?
Well, and that crown prince, I can't think of his name. MBS. MBS
Yeah.
is his nickname. So, I mean, he murdered that Washington Post reporter. I mean, in a horrible way. I mean, they cut him apart while he was alive. And I can't, it boggles the mind that he's sitting in the Oval Office with the President of the United States. The guy's a
Well,
fucking murderer.
And Donald Trump gets asked the question about that, and he said, "Well, Khashoggi was a bad guy, and a lot of people didn't like him, and things happen." That's not the
Fucking,
way people want to see him respond. That's a
uh,
ridiculously
uh,
stupid response to that whole fucking scenario.
Yeah. But really, those questions about him being there should be asked about the Republicans. Do you support him being in the office or being invited here? Because it's a money ploy. He's here because Trump is setting something up for his organization to make money off of it. Um, and so, but the guy is a ruthless fucking murderer, and he shouldn't be anywhere near the United States. And in fact, Saudi Arabia has never really been on our side. It was nice to have them I guess they were more, there was some hope that they would help with making peace with Israel in the Middle East. That was the original hope. And then it was, okay, they are a counterweight to Iran, so let's arm them to the teeth because at least they are the enemy of our enemy.
Yeah.
But Saudi Arabia has not really been our friend, so to
No.
speak. They have their own interests. There's certainly a backward country, at least if you're a woman in that country, with modern ambitions. But it's all about money, and eventually their fucking oil's going to run out. And I couldn't care less about Saudi Arabia, to be honest with you. But
Well,
the
and
crown prince, go ahead.
it's not just Donald Trump either. I mean, the relationship between a president and Saudi Arabia goes back to George W. Bush, or George H.W. Bush for that matter.
That's
And
right.
when you think about what happened on 9/11, and they're buddies with Saudi Arabia and they go after Iraq, it's obvious what's going on there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was because we had another idiot in the White House, another
Yeah.
Republican idiot. I mean, Trump killed a lot of us with his pandemic efforts, right? Or lack of.
Mm.
But George W. Bush was a moron. And he got a lot of us killed, particularly if you were in the military, and a lot more Iraqis and Afghanis got killed. So his father at least was smart enough to stay out of Saudi Arabia when he kicked them out of Kuwait, when he kicked the Iraqis out of Kuwait. He said, "I'm not going in there." And he's the guy who could have went in there. He could have just told the Iraqis, tie up Saddam Hussein, leave him outside the gates of Baghdad. We'll come and fetch him. And they probably would have done it because they got so destroyed in that first war. But his son was a complete idiot. And his only redeeming feature is he should be grateful that Trump came along to knock him off the stupid list, because they were the two stupidest presidents that were in my lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, we're coming to the end here.
Yeah.
Tony, I know you got other shit you got to do. I don't
Sick
really have
dog.
to get up early tomorrow.
Sick dog. Yeah. Bad air quality here in South Carolina. Yep. Yep. And my tankless water heater went, so we have no hot water in the house. So we got to deal with that tomorrow morning.
That sucks. That's the one
Yeah.
thing about living in a condo. When you have those kinds of problems, you just
Yeah.
call up and say, "When is this fucker going to be fixed?" I don't have to
Yeah.
worry about it. I
And
do enjoy that.
I'm sure at this point they'll tell me they're going to have to replace it. So I have to pull $7,000 out of some place to get a new one, because they told me last time, well, we can fix it, but it's pretty old. You can replace it. It's the same with my air conditioning system is at the end of its lifetime, and that's a $22,000 kind of deal. So there's home ownership. But I've lived in condos. Well, I'm not a fan. I'll put up with what I have to put up with now. Now, if it's a second place, like the place you have, where you can go down to Savannah and hang out
Yeah.
in Savannah, well, that's well worth it then. It's a second place. But for first place, I was on a board, and you watch the condo fees just climb up as
Yeah.
more and more stuff needs to be repaired in an association. And if you were in Florida right now, a lot of those places were not built up to today's codes, and now to bring it up to code, they're being hit with assessments of 50,000, 100,000, and all the rest of it. So yeah, not a fan.
No, I understand that too. I've seen some of that as well. Anyway, I'll let you get
Yes, sir.
back to the things you have to get back to. I appreciate you coming on. We'll have you back on again soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. I was happy to be on with you, Mike.
It's always a great conversation. I know people like hearing from you. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.